want to tell me in confidence that she'd had this experience, and actually she'd had it several times, and didn't know what to make of it, didn't want to think she was going crazy, but really just didn't know what to do with it, and felt at least that she could, in confidence, talk to me. I wouldn't be judgmental. I would try to help her.
Right.
She related an instance of going to the post office, standing in line, having another person come along behind her, ask the man ahead of her if he was the last person in line. That man said, yes, I am, and the new gentleman stepped into place, almost stepping on Vera.
Oh, my God.
And she stepped to the side, thought, well, this is extremely rude.
Yeah,
we have some pretty awful people here, and but continued to move up with the line, but off to the side a tiny bit. Her time came. She went up to the window, began speaking. The man behind her walked right up to the same window and began speaking, and the clerk didn't even see or acknowledge Vera, but immediately began to help the gentleman. And that was her very first time, and she just thought, these people are really rude, and she left the post office. And then just began to realize that every now and then, maybe a restaurant, maybe a shopping mall, someplace where there were a number of people with whom she'd have to interact, since that's the only way you know it's happening to you. You have to attempt to interact with someone, or you don't feel it yourself. You don't know it. Anyway, she wanted to sit with me and tell me that experience and say, am I going crazy?
I don't suppose you heard the first hour tonight, did you?
I'm afraid I didn't.
You didn't? All right. I read a letter, an email that I got tonight from a guy who was at home with his wife, and his wife couldn't find him, and he was right there.
Yes.
You know, he was right there, and she began to get angry.
Yes.
And he reacted first laughing hysterically, you know. He thought it was some sort of big joke, but then the joke time went away. And what occurred to him was, when he realized that she really was not hearing him, she really wasn't seeing him, he thought for a moment he was dead.
Oh, my. Yes, I haven't had anyone actually say that to me yet. But I can see how you might. You might think your body was laying somewhere, you were out of body, or who knows.
That, in fact, he mentioned out of body, sort of a floating experience. But
right.
But it was otherwise, everything was absolutely normal. It's just that he wasn't physically there. And at one point he was even able to talk to her.
But did she hear him?
And she heard him, and she did, but she didn't see him.
Oh, still didn't.
Ah, that's right.
Oh, okay. That's a slightly different twist from some of these. I'm sitting here, just to give you an idea of what I have in front of me. I'm sitting here with at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 piles of letters that I've tried to put in some semblance of categories so that I can offer to the listener a varied grouping of the different kinds of things that happen and the different responses, and just kind of really what's going on out there.
Well, I took call after call after reading. I think in part, I sort of parceled it out through the program, but I think I read all 7 pages ultimately of your report to my audience at one time or another as we went through the program. And people would call up saying, oh, it's absolutely true. It's happened to me. Now, it appears, I want to talk a little bit about the nature of it. You say spontaneous. Involuntary. In other words, and it's true, everybody that I have spoken with thus far has just had this happen to them. They didn't make it happen. They couldn't make it stop. It went away on its own.
That's true.
That's the way your letter.
Them. Yes, it comes upon them. In fact, many of them, I'm going to read, if I may, later or as we go along, small little portions of this one and that one, because I want you to hear some of the wording of the people themselves. And so many of them say, oh, my God, thank goodness I found you. I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I thought I was absolutely insane. Now I don't feel so alone. I'm so pleased you put that on the Internet. And
so that was this report that I'm holding that I used for that show, that was the focal beginning for you as a collection point for this kind of information. Is that
No, not quite. After Vera came to me, I filed that away wondering, what the heck do I do with this?
Right, sure.
not having heard of it myself, and thought, well, maybe she's just a little imaginative, having had other kinds of psychic experiences. And then a second person came to me sometimes later, not knowing the first person, and reported a similar type of thing. This one was similar to what the one you said earlier. The woman was sitting on her sofa, staring at the wall, trying to decide what kind of wallpaper to get, and went into kind of a reverie state, just staring at the wall. And actually, she said that she noticed that the wall seemed not quite so solid, and she became really fascinated with looking at the less solid nature of that particular wall that she was staring at. And she became so fascinated with that she kind of saw the husband walking back and forth through the house, through the living room, kind of just saw him as a shadow passing by, paid no attention. She was really lost in her thoughts.
Right.
Then eventually she kind of came out of her thoughts, and the husband said, "Where have you been? You've been hiding from me. You know that we have to go to that meeting. You know, why have you done this to me?" He was just outraged, was just yelling at her, and she was sitting there flabbergasted because she'd been there.
She was in an altered state of some kind.
Yes, and this has been reported by, in fact, I have, again, one of my categories is the time problem, so I won't really address it right yet, but there are different kinds of problems that seem to impinge on this one main one of just not being seen.
Huh.
It's quite fascinating, quite fascinating.
Well, do you think that it's possible that her, that she actually put herself into a state where she virtually was in some way gone from this reality?
Well, I think she was there. Now, I do think that she
do indeed become invisible. However, they are, in fact, physically
there.
Still there. Is that a constant thread through a lot of these?
Oh, yes. They're there, and they're looking out at the world thinking everything's normal, and they don't understand why people are crashing into them. To the person that is running into them, they don't see anything, and bang, they suddenly hit a person, and they're very shocked. The moment there's contact, the moment that they run into each other, it seems to jolt the frequency, jolt the person, the quote, invisible person.
Yes.
And they're back. And so all of a sudden the person who ran into them sees them, but can't understand why they didn't see them 1 second before. So it's as much of a shock to the person running into them as it is to the poor person who almost gets run over.
Right. I have never run into an invisible person, but I can guarantee you if I did, it would put me in shock.
Yeah.
I would go into shock.
Yeah.
Now, I've certainly sensed, I've had moments in my life, many of them, and I know everybody in the audience has, when you have sensed somebody's there. I mean, the hairs on the back of your neck go straight up. You know, I think it's a primal thing in our brains. We know when there's a presence, whether it's visible or not. Mm-hmm. You think so?
I agree with you. I think, and again, unless, we wouldn't know there was an invisible person in our midst because we plain wouldn't see them.
Yeah.
It would only be the invisible person trying to communicate with us, trying to interact with us, who would know that they were in some kind of a state that they didn't really want to be in, they weren't happy about. This woman's in Australia. She says, I'm a very big, tall girl with long black hair. Sometimes when I go shopping or out in the mall, I feel I'm not really there. I feel very calm, very relaxed, just listening to the birds or watching people. Sometimes I get a fizzy feeling, like after you blow up a balloon and you feel you're out of oxygen. Mm-hmm. Then I go to the counter and I stand there waiting to be served, but no one sees me or acknowledges me. Mm-hmm. Someone else will come up to the counter and they'll serve them straight away. It's not until I get angry, that's a key there, because it changes your frequency. It's not until I get angry and blurt out that I was next that they look at me in total surprise and then serve me. Most girls have said, I didn't see you, I'm so sorry, when I was standing right in front of them. Uh-huh. So it's coming from around the world. It's not just the U.S. I have from, in here I'll try to find the one I have from Malaysia, Africa, Brazil, Canada, Greece, England, France, all over.
Everywhere.
It's worldwide. This isn't just something happening here.
Why do you think that nobody that I'm aware of, until you have come along, has begun to put this together?
I think people, if they have the experience, as so many of these people have written to me saying, I thought I was going crazy. I couldn't tell anyone else about it. I'd be laughed at.
Oh, listen, my lines, since we've been on the air, have been dead flat full. And I know what awaits out there because I know the lands. After I read your report on the air and we did the show, I had, oh my God, a landslide of email of people who have had this experience, but they don't
don't want to talk about it. I mean, no one wants to be laughed at.
That's right.
No one wants to be thought less credible. No one wants to be held in less respect or thoughts of their family and their friends. They just don't want to talk about it. And they don't know how to explain it to themselves, so they push it way, way back in the mind. In fact, I've had a number of these say, I had this experience. I didn't know quite what to do. I thought maybe I was going crazy, so I just kind of didn't deal with it, because how could I deal with it? There was no one to talk to. There was no one to have any answers. And so these people just don't deal with it. And I think this has been happening. Well, I started in 94. I've seen an increase. I do have to tell you. I have seen an increase. So
whatever's changing.
Whenever this started, I can't say when it began for sure, but it certainly is increasing.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I think that, I wrote a book about it. It's it's not a plug. It's called The Quickening. I think that the frequency of everything is increasing. The frequency of events, the severity of events, the environment, weather, social, political, every arena of human activity, it's all quickening. It's all getting faster at a pretty rapid pace. And this may be wrapped into that someplace.
It is. I really believe that it is. So how about a few more letters? Just
absolutely.
I've got some good ones here.
Fire away.
Karen, actually, I've become friends with this woman now because she felt she couldn't talk to anyone else about these experiences, so we've kind of become quite good friends. Karen, one of her major ones, and it happened more than once to her, was she was driving in her car. She would come to a red light. She'd be the front car in the line. She'd come to a red light and stop. Pedestrians would be crossing the street. Then she'd notice that they kind of peer in, and pretty soon they're over there looking in the car windows, staring into her car. The light will go green. She'll begin to inch forward past the people, and they all have a fit because as far as they're concerned, this car is driving itself.
Oh, Donna.
They cannot see a driver, and she has had that a couple times.
Oh, Donna, right on the money. I've had. This is it's a whole separate thing. Only it's the same thing. I've had zillions of reports of driverless cars.
Oh, have you really?
Oh, Donna.
Oh, how funny.
Over the years, you'll never know.
Oh, that's very interesting. Well, when we drive, especially if it's a route that we've taken that we don't have to think about a lot,
yes,
we get, I think, at least I know I do, into just kind of a very relaxed state.
Oh, almost hypnotic.
Almost. And again, that puts you into a different brainwave frequency and can change your frequency, as I'll show here. But it's just, anyway, that was Karen's experience, one of hers.
Okay.
And the poor gal had, this other one only happened one time, but it was very disconcerting to her. She went off to a massage parlor. She was due to get a good massage, so she put on her white robe, waited in the little waiting room. She was the only one in there. Said that she was kind of cool being just in a robe, so she sat in the window in the sun, and she's got bright red hair, and here she sits there with a white gown in the sunshine, and the woman whose client she was came in twice, looked all around the room, didn't see her, left, came in a third time, walked over to a file cabinet, started making some notes on a clipboard there. She was almost knee to knee with this gal, with Karen, and suddenly, for whatever reason, well, I think Karen spoke. I think she said, well, I am here waiting, and the poor lady just about jumped out of her skin. Because as far as she was concerned, bang, this woman just appeared.
No, I hear you. In other words, when she actually vocalized that, when she said, I am here waiting, that's an exasperated, emotional response that would snap her right back out of it, huh?
Well, it's very interesting because I find two things. One is that maybe 50% of the cases, when they speak, they are suddenly seen. Huh. But there's another percentage, and I don't really truly know how to address this yet, that they can speak all they want. Like Vera in the post office, hey, I'm next. And people still do not hear or see them. And, in fact, let me find this one really interesting one that I've got here about this man. Oh, dear. Well, I'm not going to find it to read it to you, but I'll just tell you. This young boy was walking along with his friends on a back road, real gravel road. And when you walk on a gravel road, it makes a lot of noise.
That's right.
And
crunch.
He walked up on ahead of them a little bit to, I don't know why, just was on ahead, he said, by about 10 feet ahead of the other three. And suddenly he heard them sing. Now, he could hear them just fine, and he could hear himself walking. But he heard them say, my goodness, where did Brian go? Well, where could he have gone? There's nowhere to go.
I know.
And so he stopped, and he turned around, and he started to walk back towards them. Now, he can still hear himself. He can hear them. It wasn't until he got 3 feet in front of them and said, what's wrong with you? I'm right here, that they could see him again.
And then suddenly, now, did they report, in other words, do you have stories from the witnesses of seeing people suddenly appear? Do you have as many stories that way as you do of those who have disappeared? Probably not.
So. Well, no, I've got... No, not quite as many. You're right. I have a number of them, especially once people found out I was collecting this database. People wanted to say, well, guess what happened to me? And they would write to me. But, most of them are from the point of view of the poor person who experienced it, who just has to get it off their shoulders and tell their experience. Now, I do want to say to those people that are listening that think, oh, well, anybody can make up a story, there are a few components of this phenomenon that I am not reporting, I am not talking about. And it helps to keep these letters honest because when they write in and they have those components in them, and I've not spoken a word to anyone about them, I know that this person's having that experience. So I learned that in the UFO field. There's certain things you just simply don't identify or report.
Many of the finest UFO reporters I know, and that includes Peter Davenport, who used to appear here regularly, does exactly the same thing. There are things he will hold back that helps him qualify the storyteller.
Yeah, you have to do that. You have to do that. And then there are some you can just tell by the emotional content in their letter that they are feeling this. They are upset.
Now, how much correlation is there with invisibility and sightings by the people reporting these invisibility stories of apparent non-human entities? And I don't mean as in in
an encounter. You mean
an encounter sighting, or an abduction or anything like that? Just a sighting.
I can't say I can find a correlation, honestly. No, most of these folks, if you talked UFO to them, they'd probably go, "What?"
Well, no.
From a woman named Kay, she says, even at work I've had these experiences. She's proceeded to say in restaurants and places like that. And then she says, even at work, all my staff walk by my office constantly, especially when they arrive for work in the morning. I have the largest office with huge panes of glass from floor to ceiling. One morning, everyone thought I wasn't there. I was sitting in my usual place in front of the PC against the glass. And nobody could see her. And here's a gentleman, well, I like that. He said, I just saw your website, and I'm so happy to hear that other people are having similar experiences. He said, in the early 1980s, I was the manager of a large tax department in my company. My office was the corner office in an office building. My secretary sat at a desk right outside in a position where she could always see me come and go. People frequently stood outside my door waiting to talk with me or talk with my secretary. One day I left my office for a short meeting, told my secretary I'd be back in a little bit. She said okay, and I left. Several minutes later, I came back to my office, walking slowly as I looked some material over from the meeting. As I entered the anteroom entrance to my office, there was a group of 4 people who were standing in front of my office door talking. I stood for a few moments, looking at the material in my hand, thinking that perhaps the group was waiting for me. No one said anything or acknowledged me, so I assumed they were just having a discussion about an issue and were not waiting for me.
Right.
I excused myself, walked between them and my secretary, who was looking straight ahead at the group. I smiled at the secretary, but she acted like she didn't see me. I walked into my office, left the door open, and sat at my desk to read the material from the meeting. The group continued to stand outside my office talking. About 5 minutes later, my telephone rang, and I heard my secretary answer the phone and tell someone I was away from my office. So I walked to the door and looked out at her. She looked at me, jumped out of her seat, and said, "How did you get in the office? I've been waiting for you, looking for you. How long have you been there? How did you do that?" She was visibly shaken and turning pale. The other people standing outside my office turned and looked at me in disbelief, their eyes and mouths wide open. They said they had needed to meet with me about an emergency issue and were anxiously waiting for me to return.
Wow.
My secretary was so shaken by the experience that an hour later her hands were still trembling. And he goes on and he says that he's had other experiences like that.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's going on, and we need to know so much more about it.
That's true.
All right, let's go to the phone lines and see what's out there. It should be really interesting.
It should be, yes.
All right, here we go. First-time caller line. You're on the air with Donna Higbee. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Donna, amazing knowledge you're speaking of. And I was wondering, and this kind of ties in with what Art was saying about the mass brain consciousness and these cycles of violence that are just absolutely spinning out of control. And
I've only had 2 reports from people who said that they had had run-ins with the police and had had this experience while they were, one was trying to steal clothes in a department store for the fun of it with friends, more of a kind of a high school prank rather than being a real heavy criminal.
Right.
The whole group was caught and taken to the police department. Everyone was checked out and detained except this one woman. No one saw her. No one asked for her ID. No one even talked with her at all. She finally got up from the group, walked past the guards, and left. And later, when she talked with her friends, they thought she hadn't even been caught.
She walked right out of the police station.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. And even the friends didn't remember her being in the police van when it had taken them all away. And then there was a gentleman, first names only, of course, Daniel, said that he was with a group of people who were popping firecrackers. Now, that doesn't sound terribly violent to me either. Again, the police came. There were 12 of us, he says. The cops asked everyone to get their IDs ready. I was scared. I'm reading this now. I was scared. I remember thinking I didn't want to be there. I was sweating. The cop handed each person back their ID as he passed down the line. Then he would take the ID of the next person and call it in. I was the last person in line. I was also the largest person there. I was even larger than the policeman. The cop never even acted like he saw me, never asked for my ID.
Wow.
Neither of the 2 cops paid any attention to me. All of my friends thought I had left. Many asked me afterwards where I went to hide. I told all of them that I was there. No one would believe me. Now, those are the only 2 that I've had that talk about any kind of crime, and I don't
but
think
again, will and intention.
Mm-hmm.
And something else probably. Will and intention, and then some force we don't totally understand yet.
Right.
Right?
Right. I would agree with you.
And so there is where you and somebody at a major academic entity somewhere in this country need to get together. This is serious enough that I think it deserves a real downtown investigation, and you sure have. So that's the bar I think you've taken this to.
Pretty much. I got, let me just put in here because I think it's very interesting. I got one email, I think it was just in the last day or 2, I've had so many, from someone informing me that I should get a hold of the police department in Orlando, Florida, and ask them about the case that they have of a man who is a criminal in Orlando who has this ability to disappear on them. I guess the entire police force knows this person.
Oh.
And they said I should get a hold of them, and anybody there could tell me, because they certainly know who this man is, and he can seemingly disappear when they're on the chase. So that, there's a criminal mind type for you, but again, we don't know how serious his crimes are.
A couple questions, Donna, sort of jumping around. Any correspondence from anybody apparently in this state with the opportunity to see a mirror?
Oh, yes, I've had a number of those.
Really?
Yes. People, again, it's interesting because I've had about 4 or 5 lately. They all were saying that they were in a meditative state purposely.
Yes.
One woman was sitting on her bed meditating. Her daughter came in. She glanced up. She could see herself in the mirror and see the daughter come in. Now, the daughter came in, could not see the mother, could not see anything in the mirror. Not that
Wow.
she specifically stared in the mirror, but it was right at a good angle.
Okay,
and
that would mean then that the mirror is returning
the same
higher frequencies,
yes.
right?
Yes, and I've heard that a number of cases, a number of times, to think that does seem to be the pattern. The person can see themselves, but no one else can see them.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it would.
The mirror could certainly be returning much higher frequencies, and so you simply wouldn't be out of range yourself. You'd just be out of range of the other person.
The other one, yes.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, wild card line, you're on the air with Donna Higbee. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Paul. Hi, Donna. Anthropologically, I was thinking about how the idea of matter and not being able to be seen, like possibly...
West of the Rockies, call toll-free, 1-800-618-8255.
Like Bigfoot, for example, can sort of disappear into the cloud.
I think he's an other dimensional being.
Or our matter and spiritual and their part, in their evolution. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? As, there's no voice. Let's say, if you're talking visual language, that's how I perceive it. People being able to disappear, whatever you want to call it. Like, say, for instance, all we know is our own language. Like, you're not going to eat that, are you? Or, are you going to eat that? I mean, you can get any response you want because that's what we know. But visually, in a realm of people who are only used to voice, visually you can conduct anything you want, I would think, whether it's yourself or how you want them to perceive you,
Well, are they? Do you think, Donna, they're tied together? Those who are able to be unseen, virtually invisible, and those who are able to project an image into another's mind. There's got to be a connection there somewhere, huh?
I do believe there are those people that can project, as we said earlier, but again, their basic motive is intention and will to do so.
Yep.
And the people that are contacting me are very upset, if anything, thinking they're going crazy. Their last thing they're doing is willing this to happen or wishing to be invisible. There's a few, like maybe these people at the police department that want to not be there and would like not to be seen, and then it somehow happens, and I think they are causing that. But most of my cases, almost all of them, with the exception of just a few like that, this is happening, as my little blurb says, spontaneously and involuntarily.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be the case if all of this is true? If everything we're talking about is true, at least people able to become invisible, if that's really true, then that would be an innate human ability that obviously we haven't really explored, except for the yogis and whoever all.
That's true.
That type of person. It would be a great unknown, so it would tend to occur spontaneously and almost without the person. That doesn't mean that people couldn't train themselves to use this if they knew how.
I agree. I think they could. If they knew it existed and they knew how. Now, if you go way back into, like, Patanjali with Yoga Sutras and things of that nature, there were instructions. Patanjali gave instructions in those how to become invisible. The Rosicrucians have manuals, how to walk invisible among men. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are manuals out there, and there are people who I think have done the training and can do it. I don't think that that's an impossibility at all.
I wonder how many people actively understand the process and actually are in control of it when they need to be. It's not something you'd talk about. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't talk about it.
No.
Or you probably wouldn't, unless you were enticed to call a program like this. Otherwise, you're not going to talk about this. You might use it in various ways. And I wonder how many people are out there walking around able to do that, Donna.
I don't know. It would be very interesting to find out.
Well, maybe we're talking to enough people right now that we will.
We'll hear some. Mm-hmm.
All right. Again, Donna's email address, because I know you're going to be writing to her, is goodhigbee. That's all in lowercase letters. Just write this down. GOODHIGBEE. goodhigbee@AOL.com. That's her address. And we obviously need to learn a lot more, and so talking to this many people, I think we can pull enough stories.
His original correspondence, and then I've talked with him since then. And while he was in the bathroom, he says, I'll read it as it says here. While I stood at the toilet, I looked up and caught sight of my face looking back at me from the mirror of the bathroom cabinet. I was shocked by my appearance and appeared to have aged 20 years. My eyes in particular seemed odd and sunken. And then he proceeds to say how he walked out and the woman couldn't see him. He went downstairs, tried to get a cigarette from his friends. They couldn't see him. He went back upstairs again, trying to catch somebody else to find a cigarette. And only then did the woman, who was still waiting outside the bathroom, not knowing he ever came out, saw him come up behind her and was absolutely shocked because she thought he was still in the restroom.
Well,
now, I don't know what happened there because people have said, why didn't she see the door open and shut? Now, maybe he went, I don't know. You're saying that woman walked into a wall. Maybe he went through it.
Well, there's a hint there with respect to the way he looked to himself.
See, the time was different somehow. And this comes up and up. People can't put their finger on it, but they say there was just something.
These are some kind of openings.
Mm-hmm.
There's
vortexes of some
kind
sort.
of rip or opening, you can get very science fiction-y about it, but it's something like this, some kind of rip or opening or tear or flux, magnetic, electronic flux of some sort, some dimensional portal perhaps. I mean,
right.
you stab around in the dark, but it's going on. The question is, what the hell is it?
Yeah, but don't you think we're seeing a lot of different things? I don't know that all of these has one basic source. It seems like, knowing how to form the cloud and raise your vibration is maybe an innate ability, as you say. And then the spontaneity of it happening to you, maybe that is too, but maybe that's something else. And then when it happens to you spontaneous and there's a time problem, maybe we're talking a dimensional shift. I mean, it's just so much. It's very interesting.
Maybe there's all sorts of things that are going on. You want to sort of be able to, the human mind tries to put it all together, and maybe it can't be put together. We'll find out. That's why it should be investigated. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Donna Higbee. Hi.
Hi, how are y'all doing?
Okay, sir. Not a lot of time. What's up?
I wanted to see if she had ever recorded a case possibly where someone in the state of invisibility manipulated a physical object in front of witnesses, and then perhaps the witnesses later on recorded like poltergeistic, effects.
Poltergeist-like activity. Oh, yeah. There's a really
good one. That's
yes.
a good one.
Donna?
Yes, I'm happy to address that. I don't have the answers. I'm still pursuing this, as we all are. But it seems that anything in direct contact with the person, if they're holding it, they have a coat draped over their arm, whatever, that seems to be included in their frequency shift, and the person doesn't see that either. So you wouldn't just see a coat going through the air without a person holding it, or a teacup.
All right, then if a person in that state were to pick up a physical object or come in contact with a physical object while in that state, what would occur to that object? Would it suddenly wink out as well?
I would assume that it would, but I haven't had anybody report to me that they have witnessed that. Because if they do think they see that, I think people blink and think they saw things.
Well, there are certainly people that have reported poltergeist-like activity, things moving through the air, that sort of thing.
That's true. But most of in every case that I've had, I've never had anybody say they saw an item in the air unsuspended by itself. Suspended by itself.
Oh, I've had those reports, Donna.
Have you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. I haven't had that in this so far.
Okay. Well, you'll get them.
I bet I will.
Listen, it's my understanding you're in the process or contemplating writing a book?
Yes, I have. Excuse me. I have so many notes, and I have so many good pieces of data and theories that I'm in the process of putting it together. I just need to find a publisher out there. But
what's the working title?
I think it'll just be HSII, Experiences in Theory.
Well, you need a really catchy...
That's all I am at the moment. I have a ways to go yet by all regards, but I'll get some kind of a good title to it. That's just my little title right now that I'm storing my notes in.
Something like Gone. I don't know, something... how have you actually begun work on the book?
Yeah. In that I have pages of data and stacks of notes, but to put it all in an absolute consecutive order, not completely. I haven't completely gotten in that route yet. I've got
Boy, do you have a
letters.
Process to
I've
go
got
through.
I've got a lot to go, and I'm hoping some of the data that I'll get through people contacting me after being with you might help fulfill some of this. I can contact them and talk with them, and who knows.
Yep. And toward that end, folks, one more time, listen very carefully. I'm going to give you Donna's email address. Please write it down. Please don't email me for it. Listen carefully. Get it now. Here it is. Good Higbee. That's GOODHIG, B as in boy, EE. Good, all run together. Good Higbee at AOL.com. It's easy. Are you getting it? That's GOODHIGBEE at AOL.com. Obviously, experiences that you're going to relate to her are going to help. She's an investigator, and obviously a very good one. Donna, it has been such a pleasure having you on the program.
This has been really fun. I've enjoyed it so much.